What is good people? You are now listening to the latest episode of At the Plate with Danny Foxworth. I am your humble narrator, Danny Foxworth, and today we have an extremely special guest. He was one of the first people that I told that I was going to make my foray into this podcasting thing, and he said, do it, man. Go ahead and do it. And once you do it, I want to be a guest on your podcast. So we're making things happen. He's the guest on my podcast. He's an MC. He's a podcaster. He's a columnist. He's an ambassador. He's a man around town. If you don't know him, I guarantee you know somebody that knows him. I wouldn't say he's the mayor of Columbia, South Carolina, but he's the mayor of Columbia, South Carolina. Party people and the place to be. We have Priest Jacobs in the building. What's good, bro?
What's going on, man? I'm glad to be here, man.
Man, I tell you, man, I'm excited for this one for sure. So, you got an album coming out on February 24th, Francis, and yes. I happened to get an advance copy of it. He had a lovely private record release party yesterday. I went up to Columbia and we chopped it up and we jammed out to some tunes.
Yeah.
That was an extremely, I love fun black ass times with
absolutely,
with
man.
My fellow folks, man.
We do that shit in February, man. We had to do that for a reason, man.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So just want to get into the album a little bit. What was the basis of you creating this album?
Well, I named it Francis. It's named after my grandmother, and she simultaneously, I stopped making music because of her, and I started making music because of her. So, like in the middle of me, like recording songs for this project, she passed away, and then I was just like, all right, well, fuck it, I ain't doing nothing. You know, you kind of, you know. There's something, and I talk a little bit about this on the record. There's something about Black people needing to learn how to mourn, and I think traditionally we don't know how to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like we just go through that whole thing where it's just like, you know, all time heals wounds. Like, no, healing heals wounds, and so I think a lot of what ends up happening, we're just accustomed to just dealing with a lot of trauma and not dealing with it. And my grandmother was kind of like the center of a lot of stuff in my family. So when she passed away, I kind of just got discouraged for a bit. And then I just started, you know, after she passed, I found some more information about her. Like I started talking to relatives that knew her, and you start hearing like stories about her and things that she went through. And I think I mentioned this yesterday, the last conversation I had with her before she passed, we were having this conversation about like protest and how did she feel during Jim Crow movement and Jim Crow era. And we had this conversation, and she told me that when she was a little girl, her great grandmother used to live with her, and her great grandmother was an enslaved person.
Wow.
And so how we do that 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, where oh, I met this person, so I'm, you know, connected to this. So the fact that I connected with my grandmother and she connected with an enslaved person made it so that it's 1 degree of separation from slavery, right? Like that shit just puts a lot of that stuff in perspective for me. And so I just started from all the column writing and things that I was doing, I found myself trying to tell these stories about her and the struggles that she went through. And then I ended up realizing, you know, I am, I tell people that my goal in making music and art is a love letter to the ancestors. So it's like, you know, if she wasn't able to say a lot of this stuff that she went through and the struggles she went through, I got to speak on her behalf. And so thinking of that and learning more about the stuff that she went through in the life she had, it motivated me to start making music again. And so the artwork, the signature on the cover, is her actual signature from an old Bible that she gave me.
That's so dope.
And then the font on the back, we tried to like create the font to match her signature, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, so it's yeah, man, it's really dope. And so I'm really excited because the way we're going to do the listening party in Columbia, you know, I don't want to just do a listening party where you're just performing some songs, because like that's cool, but ultimately I love the conversation about what went into it. So like a few years ago, I did a one-man show in Columbia called Black as Fuck, and it was at Trust's Theater, and it was literally me talking. And so it was part TED Talk, part performance, part comedy, but it was just me talking. And we sold like 200 tickets for a show for people just to see me talk. And I realized people resonate with those conversations. So you don't have to like overdo it and oversell it. So the way we want to do the listening party is I'll perform, I'll talk a little bit, but I'm calling him my therapist, but clinical psychologist, Dr. Napoleon Wells, one of the greatest minds that I know, great Black minds, artist, writer, psychologist. We're going to have 2 chairs set up and just have a conversation. You know what I mean? And talk about a lot of the things that went into the record. So we're going to talk about the Black trauma. We're going to talk about the healing process. We're going to talk about Black joy. And I basically told him, I was like, yo, whatever you want to talk about, just bring it up. I don't want there to be any rehearsals. You know what I mean? So there's an opportunity for something magical to happen. So I might have an ugly Kerry Washington cry. I might have, you know, something that can spark a conversation or whatever, but that's the way that I want to do the music and the art and the project. So it's a total blackety Black experience, but it's definitely me paying homage to my grandmother and a lot of these Black folks that are in a lot of our families that never had an opportunity to tell their stories.
I love the reason behind you doing what you're doing, that you said it's a love letter to your ancestors. Man, a love letter to your ancestors. That is a bar right there. My goodness.
Make me feel dope. But yeah, that's how I feel about it, right? It's like I'm in this weird space as a columnist here where as an artist, right, you know, I've learned making music. If you don't have like vinyl or something like that, people are gonna listen to your music and stream it, and they think they're helping you out. Like people will be like, "Oh, I stream your songs," and we make like a fraction of a penny, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized was, as a columnist here in Columbia, I'm one of the few Black columnists, maybe the only Black columnist in this town. And I realized when I write a column, there's about 10,000 people that have access to something that I'm writing. And I write about these Black experiences. I wrote my most recent column. My parents' anniversary is February the 11th. And I wrote this column kind of as a anniversary gift for them. But the column was basically about Black love and them being married almost 50 years.
Wow.
And kind of that same concept is kind of telling their story where, you know, I turned 40 this year and I'm not married. I don't have any kids. And I'm kind of like, well, shit, man, how can I think about having a family, how crazy things are, how terrible things are. And then when I think about my parents, I'm like, well, shit, 48 years ago, it was probably even worse.
Mm-hmm.
So for them to start a family, that was a very intentional thing to say, like, things are really, really terrible, but we love each other so much that we feel like we can build something despite that. And so, like, you know, Black love is a revolutionary thing because it exists. You know what I mean? And so I find myself when I write those type of columns, there's thousands of people that have access to it and read it and see it. And sometimes it doesn't happen with the music. You know what I mean? Even though I'm more passionate about the music at times, I have to use the avenues that God gives me. So like if 10,000 people are reading our article and that opens up a gateway, then people depend on me as a communicator. And so to do a listening party, I want to, you know, put that element in there. I want to put that element of conversation in there because I thought that was really important. It's like hearing 2 Black men talk about about Black shit. I think the people will respond to that, and it's not just your traditional rapping. You know what I mean? So like, I'm really excited about it. You know.
And I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be March 5th at the Nickelodeon Theater in Columbia, South Carolina, and I will be in attendance.
Well, I tell you what, too. If you want to do a giveaway, I can give away a pair of tickets. So however you want to do the giveaway, if you want to do a giveaway when we put this pod out, I'll have 2 tickets we can do as a giveaway for it.
Okay, so, cool. Yeah, definitely. We'll do that. And also another thing that you are the brainchild behind, which is one of my favorite things, is the Negro League podcast. Like, seriously, if you go on my Spotify at my end of the year list, yours in my top 5 podcasts that I listen to, yours is like number 2. It's like frog's hair under the number 1 spot. Dude, your podcast consumes so much of my work day, and I'm so appreciative of it. Bro, how did you get into podcasting?
Well, I kind of want to lean on you and ask you a question. It's like, you know, what episode is this for your pod?
This is episode 4.
How frequent are you doing it? Once a week? Once a month?
Every other week.
All right. Well, good. And see, all right. So the way the podcast started, just some like history for it. Originally, me and my homie Dre, shout out to Dre Lopez, we were gonna do a pod called Thelonious Drunk. and it was just kind of cool play on words. And we would just be at the crib just drinking and talking shit. It was on some, I'm black, he's Puerto Rican. It was on some Deezus and Merrill shit before Deezus and Merrill, right? But there was a few things that kind of came into the fold, right? Like I understand turning the microphone on and talking is easy for me, but it's not something that everybody's kind of accustomed to or something that comes natural to people. So like we would do this pod, and my rule was always, hey, if I turn the microphone on, whatever we say on the mic, like it should be good to go, because I wanted to be able to, if we're talking about topical things, I want to be able to get them out there. And Dre, to his credit, he was like, hey man, I don't know how I feel about drinking a bunch on a pod and then releasing it the next day. I need to review it. You know what I mean? And they got to the point where the process would take so long, me editing and all this type of shit, that the information would just be old. And then, I gotta be honest, man, the pandemic and everything, like it made people drink a lot more, or not made people drink a lot more, but it made people just stay home. And whatever advice you had, if you were dealing with any emotional duress, you can lean into a vice. And I didn't think it was healthy for both of us to be going through some shit, to have a podcast named Thelonious Drunk based on drinking. You know what I'm saying? Like I just it's like literally we were kind of ahead of the game on that shit, because like him and I joked about Drink Champs, and we was like, dog, we was doing this before Nori did it. But there was an episode of Drink Champs where Big Sean said to Nori, he was like, yo, are y'all okay? Because y'all drinking heavy every episode of this podcast. You know what I'm saying? Like at some point in time, you had to kind of take self-inventory for that shit. And so my thing was, I wanted to do something more consistent, and the timing and everything was kind of messed up. I couldn't catch up with him as consistently as I wanted. So I was just like, well, shit, I want to do something where if I can't get somebody to talk to me, I want to do something I can control it myself. And so the Negro League was just basically me just wanting to talk about blackity black shit. In the first episode of the Negro League, it was tough because it kind of grew into this thing where I'm interviewing people. But when it started, it was just me talking by myself for like 20 minutes. And you get in your head at times because you're basically like, well, shit, is anybody gonna listen to me talk for 20 minutes? And what I learned was this. I learned this advice that I would give you. I had to stop giving a fuck about the numbers, because if I pay attention to how many people are listening or how many people aren't listening, it's going to drive me crazy. And so my theory was, instead of me worrying about how many people are listening, I want to get good. So if I record these episodes and have a body of work, if something pops off and people get tuned into a pod, then all of a sudden you can double back and I have a collection of episodes. And so it started turning into, like, when I can get people in my crib to talk, or people on the phone, it turned into like just really a dope opportunity just to talk to folks. But I'm a little disappointed in myself because I'm not as consistent as I once was. And I think that's kind of the secret to it. And seeing you do this is motivating me to get back in there, because like the great part about it is the worst part about it. The great part is nobody is beating down my door to make me do it. But the worst part about it is you need that motivation sometimes to keep going. So to be self-motivated, I think is really, really great. So like I would just say, keep making the episodes. Don't beat yourself up if you feel like it ain't as smooth as you want it. I hate hearing my voice on my shit. Like the whole, like yesterday when we did the listener party, my man Scott was like, yo, you want me to play this song, one of your songs off the album? I was like, nah, I'm gonna walk out the room. Like I just like, it just gets uncomfortable. But like you got to get to that point where it's just second nature. So just keep creating it. So essentially the Negro League is just some blackity black shit. And there's something that I'm working on now that I want to do with it. If things work out, I feel like there's like a big opportunity for the pod. And it's a big opportunity because like when I'm talking to places about doing some stuff with it, I got like 70 something episodes that they can use as a reference. So yeah. So Negro League podcast, it's on all your pod outlets and all that good stuff.
Yeah, highly recommended. So good. And speaking of the Negro League, I think this would be a good time to transition into the meat and potatoes of the program. Let's talk we'll get into a little hardball talk. So, what were your earliest memories of the sport of baseball?
I got a few of them. Number one, growing up, it was just all Ken Griffey Jr. shit, all Deion Sanders shit. I think Bo Jackson was probably someone that stuck out to me pretty heavy between Pro Stars and the cross trainers.
Oh
Like,
my God, Pro
oh, like
Stars.
look, yo, that cartoon, my dumb ass. The cartoon was supposed to be Michael Jordan, Bo Jackson, and Wayne Drexler were like brothers. It was like,
Yeah, right.
I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, just a dumb kid, it's like it used to come on before a Wish Kid. That was a Macaulay
Culkin.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're dating ourselves right now, right?
So be it.
So those are some of my baseball memories. The earliest memories was also, I don't know if I was a Braves fan, but I grew up a Braves fan because those were the only games we could watch. Like
Right.
TBS around here, though, that was the station, and so we would see that. And so, like, those mid-90s Braves teams were pretty incredible. And then I was this historian, so I was really obsessed with the Negro League. I was obsessed with Jackie Robinson, Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson. Like, I was just really, really hell bent on a lot of that stuff because that fascinated me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If I was thinking, I would have had my Jackie Robinson and my Satchel Paige jersey on right now. But it was like, but it was just something that I just gravitated towards it, and I just thought that it was just so dope because I loved the idea of the Negro League, where it was basically like, hey man, the major leagues are dragging their feet. They don't want us. Fuck it. We got our own economy. We have our own teams. We have our, because it wasn't just the baseball team. It was the local economy that was based around it. It was
Right.
It was the black hotels when you went to a city to see a game that the players stayed in. It was, the black restaurants and vendors and all the people that were involved with this economy, and that always just fascinated me. So growing up, my earliest memories was finding those historical black players and questioning why the fuck they're not put in the same sentences as the Babe Ruths and all that good stuff. So those are my earliest memories of baseball, and I romanticized the Negro Leagues and a lot of the black players that didn't get their just due.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what you said about the Negro Leagues, one of the things I love most about them is the players have some of the coolest names, bro. Like, you got Satchel Paige, you got Cool Papa Bell, Buck O'Neill, Rube Foster, Oscar Charleston. I mean, just glorious names, man. And
man,
also,
look,
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say you're spot on about it. And the thing about it too, it's like, I think of the Negro League the way I think of how white America treated jazz music, where you would see the curious white college kids sneak into Harlem to hear these black players play, where you might have had white musicians that might have been more prominent in a lot of these other places, but they knew where the great skills were, right? And so, like, I can't imagine a league, like, if you look at any league without black and brown people, it's the most boring shit ever. You know what I'm saying? And so,
I agree.
Like, the Negro League was where the flavor was. The Negro League was where the best players were. And the crazy thing about Major League Baseball is that they knew it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They knew it. Like, Major League Baseball was kind of like boxing in a way, where it was like, I'm a big Jack Johnson fan in boxing. The concept of the Great White Hope was based on when Jack Johnson became the first black heavyweight champion. There was this national campaign to find a white boxer to knock him out, because they felt that it said something for the greatest boxer in the world to be a black man. They felt like it knocked them down a notch. And I feel like white America felt the same way about baseball. It's like they felt like, yo, if we acknowledge that the best pitcher is Satchel Paige, or the best hitter, the siren outside, I'm sorry if it might be loud, but the best hitter is Josh Gibson, they felt like it was acknowledging some inferiority somehow,
Yeah.
That shit loud as a motherfucker. Can you hear it?
Yeah, I can.
I played my mixtape. I was playing my mixtape and the fire department came out.
Yeah, it was too hot. But I always say, regarding the Negro League,
Mm.
I don't have very many regrets in life, but one of my biggest regrets is not getting a picture with Buck O'Neil, because I happened to get a chance to meet him at a Kansas City Royals game. This was back in, I want to say 2002, maybe. And he was just
Wow.
walking around and just talking to everybody. And I got a chance to meet him, and we talked for a good 15 minutes. And it didn't even cross my mind to get a picture with him. And
Oh
I was
man.
like, man,
When did he pass away?
I think he passed away in '05, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken.
Yeah.
And went to the Negro League Museum in Kansas City too. That was awesome. That was an incredible experience.
I need to make a trip out there.
Yeah,
Man,
Kansas City is dope. Kansas City is
really.
real dope. So, who were some of your favorite players?
Um, I think as I have starting lineups behind me, um, like I said, I think Ken Griffey Jr. was that guy for me. Him and that fucking swing, like growing
Oh
up,
man,
yo,
yes. This is like the
yo.
second straight episode we bring him up, man. This is a testament
Oh,
to his greatness.
I mean, and that's the thing too, is that you know, baseball has this issue now where black kids aren't getting into it. And I think that's kind of crazy because everybody, if I'm of the age that if I had kids right now, they would be probably playing baseball. But the way that they would play baseball is if they hear me talk about the stuff that I love growing up. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And so my thing is, I don't know what baseball is doing to lose that interest because they're acting like black folks wasn't into it. Like, but we were crazy about that shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Ken Griffey Jr. Oh my gosh. Let me think who my guys. I mean, a lot of the big stereotypical names: Ken Griffey, Dion, Bo. Um, gosh. Oh, I know there's some people from here that I'm forgetting about that was in the league. But just I used to collect my cards. I need to look and see what I got. But I think Ken was like the top of the food chain. Um, Old school Barry Bonds, which I always get crazy about him not being in the Hall of Fame. I think he was a Hall of Famer before the steroids.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a whole theory behind that whole thing. I feel like, let me get off on a small tangent, but I feel like the Baseball Hall of Fame needs to be a museum. And what I mean by that is it needs to not be the moral police. It needs to acknowledge the history. And my thing
Mm-hmm.
is, the last time I saw Major League Baseball go crazy was the home run races with Barry and McGuire. And Major League Baseball, they knew people were juicing, but like they were happy to get the money from the ticket sales or whatever. And so the way I feel about it is this: you put them, you put these people in the Hall of Fame and put an asterisk by it. The same way I feel about a Babe Ruth, where we romanticize his home run record, but he ain't never played no black or brown players.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like that's the same thing, right? If you're not playing the best competition that's out there, then that shit should come with a disclaimer. It's like, all right, you got
Yeah,
750 home runs, but
I
you know what I'm
agree.
saying? And so that's the one thing that I always felt that kind of just drives me crazy. But we grew up on that shit. We grew up going to the Braves games because that was the closest national team was like Braves
Mm-hmm.
and Falcons games. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And somehow I was an Eagles fan. But yeah, but those are the players that I had growing up. I think my favorite baseball player probably was Jackie Robinson. Because I just thought that I just from a young age, I just knew the shit he had to go through. And by no means did we feel as if Jackie was the best player out of the Negro Leagues, because if that's the case, Josh Gibson would have been in there. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And Satchel got in the league when he was like 40. He actually won a World Series with the Cleveland Indians. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But Jackie was the guy that was kind of like the right guy for the movement. And I think that Jackie has been whitewashed over the years, the same way we whitewash, or white people whitewash, Martin Luther King. Whereas it's like, I hate the narrative of MLK being this really submissive, passive dude. And I was like, yo, he's a black man born in Atlanta in 1929. There's no punking Martin Luther King.
Mm-mm.
You know what I'm saying? And I feel the same way about Jackie. There's no punking Jackie, you know, and I feel like that some parts I feel like history tries to paint him in a way to make him seem a little more docile than what he was. But like Jackie was really went through some shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Rachel Robinson is still alive, actually. I have a signed baseball card from her.
No kidding.
Yeah, she might be 100 by now, close to it.
Yeah.
She's probably like 98 right now. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So who are some of your least favorite players, if you have any?
I get weird, man. Like the players I hate are all like historical players that I've never saw. I really fucking hate Ty Cobb.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah,
Knew
it's
it.
like just historically looking at a lot of these players that, and it's in it. I hate Ty Cobb. I you know, I think it was Ty Cobb on the off season. He used to work as a cop, and they asked him like, "How do you keep in shape during the off season?" And he'd be like, "Oh, I keep in shape by busting niggas over the head." And this guy, he's in a major league Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? Like it's people like that. I wouldn't say I dislike Babe Ruth. I have certain Babe Ruth theories. And it's a little complicated. I think at the end of the day, Babe Ruth's argument can always be, "Hey man, I played against the people that was in front of me." So in that regard, I get it. He was the most unathletic superstar I've ever seen. Like, there's nothing about Babe Ruth that looks like an athlete. It drives me crazy. Plus, have you heard the theory that he's black?
I have.
All right. So if you look at some of these pictures, man, he got like this big nose, big lip. You know what his nickname was when he was so when he was a kid, he used to act up all the time. He would get in trouble. I think he grew up maybe at a bar and a brothel or something like that. His parents or whatever was just crazy, and he ended up getting in trouble all the time. So they sent him to like a boarding school, and that's where like a priest that ran a boarding school put a baseball bat in his hand, and he used to get teased all the time. His nickname that the kids used to tease him, they used to call him Nigger Lips.
Yep, I remember.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So like, so if we're talking about like, you know, black people trying to pass, I always felt like Baby Ruth, that could be a possibility. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always had this thing where I wanted to write like a script for a movie or something, and it would be like a scene from the movie where the main character has like a grandfather that used to be in the Negro Leagues, and there'd be a scene where like Satchel Paige is pitching at a game, and after the game, Satchel is in his hotel room and somebody knock on the door, and it's Babe Ruth trying to be all cool and shit, and Babe Ruth come in and give him the black dap, you know what I mean? And they have one of these conversations where Satchel Paige is like acknowledging the Babe, like, "Yo, man, I know what you're doing, this and this and that. You know, I hope nobody ever finds out." You know what I mean? And it just becomes like a little pebble in a story to kind of talk about that, because I think that kind of makes sense. So Babe is fascinating to me. I just really get frustrated about baseball. Is one of those weird sports where when people talk about the good old days, it's always drenched in something that feels uncomfortable to me.
Yeah, I feel you.
You know, when they say the good old days, I'm like, do you mean before we were in it? You know what I mean? I have a book by what's my man's name? I got it in here somewhere. Kurt Flood. And Kurt Flood, I feel I put him up there with Jackie Robinson as being one of the most important black players in sports, because he was responsible for free agency. So like in baseball, if you signed to a team, they had you sign for life, you know? And Kurt Flood was one of them dudes that was just like, "Nah, dog, this goes against, you know, the Constitution, whatever. Like, I can't be signing life for this." Like, you know, and he was one of those people that really pushed back pretty heavy. and kind of created like the way we have these contracts now. But there was a lot of like black players that went through so much shit that from a historical level, I'm more obsessed with that. But Ty Cobb's one of those players that I hate.
I feel you on that 100%. Man, so we're gonna lighten the mood a little bit now. We're gonna go into the 5 question segment.
Okay.
Got 5 of the most pressing questions on planet Earth. The first and last question are the same question I ask every guest I have on here, and questions 2 through 4 are totally random. So, question number 1: what were the ideal items on Priest Jacobs' school lunch tray?
All right. So it depends on it's two answers. Like if we're talking about my elementary school days, the square pizzas was always the thing that we loved. Like it was like the little square joint on the lunch tray.
Mm-hmm.
We always look forward to that. I tell you something real random we did. The second favorite lunch thing in elementary school. I don't know if anybody else did this. I'm probably out myself with somebody kind of weird, but spaghetti day was a dope day at school. So like we would have like a spaghetti.
Mm-hmm.
They had a little sections on your tray. It was spaghetti. They would have like a little cinnamon bun, and it would be like an applesauce and a salad. And it was something my brother and I would do. We used to put the applesauce in our spaghetti. I don't know really? Why it made sense. We used to do that shit, and people used to make fun of us, and then we made everybody converts. I can't explain it. I've never done it as an adult, but we would get the spaghetti and put the applesauce in the shit and eat it. And it was just something about it, flavor-wise. I don't know what it was, but it was just really fucking fly. I don't know. But when I think about school lunches, those are the things that I remember. Now, if we had to go somewhere, we had to take a lunch. We would have the cold cuts. There used to be these cold cuts. It was like these ham cold cuts. They used to have like the little cheese in them, and these little specks of cheese in them.
Yeah.
Put that on some bread with some mustard. That was a wrap. So that was the shit. If we had to go somewhere and take a lunch, that was the shit that we had. So those are the school lunch choices that I can remember that I'm getting really nostalgic right now. But yeah, that school pizza was probably terrible if we ate it now, but something about it just felt great. You know what I'm saying?
And I'll never yuck anyone's yum. You get that sweet and savory experimentation with the applesauce on the spaghetti. I ain't mad at you.
It's something to it. If I haven't tried it as an adult, I might go back and try it again. But it was something about it. It just made sense. It just made sense.
And I can't say anything because I know when I was in daycare, we'd have rice and gravy sometimes, and I'd be the only weirdo in daycare that would put ketchup on my rice instead of gravy. And all the other kids looked at me and they'd laugh and point like, ew, weird.
I might have to try. It'd be the same thing as putting tomatoes on it. So I don't think that's too crazy.
I get it. That. All right, question number 2. What are your top 3 versus matchups?
Oh gosh. So it had to be stuff that already happened or something I want to see.
There's the verses that already happened.
Okay. Number 1, Jadakiss, man. Like not Jada and Fab. I'm talking about the Locks versus Dipset. I think that was one of those things where rarely do you have a situation. It's like, you hear actors talking and it'll be like an actor talking about doing movies and shit. But when they talk about Daniel Day-Lewis, an actor that's already famous, would be like, nah, I know I'm an actor, but Daniel Day-Lewis is something different. Like, there's that acknowledgement. I felt like that was one of those moments where, as much as I love like Dipset and Diplomats and all that shit, it felt like they didn't take it seriously enough. And it was something about the Locks being the people to just really, really show motherfuckers like, hey man, y'all half-ass this. And put like this, if the Locks would have half-assed it too, I don't think it would have been that big of a deal because we would have just been like, oh, it's a fun night.
Yeah.
But they were just out to kill. I think there was something about that was like changed a lot of shit. And also it helped, look, I got some Pharmacy for Life shit in my house right now because of that. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Me too.
You know what I mean? So like I think that was something really, really important for the culture to see that happen. I think the second battle I tell you this, it wasn't the best one, but I was literally having a conversation about COVID today. And we forget, because it was like, what, 2020, 2021? Like, we would shut the fuck down.
Yeah.
This was not the best battle by any means, best versus by any means, but the RZA versus Primo shit, I think that touches me because that was the first thing that felt, I wouldn't say close to normal, but it was one of those rare moments where it was just like, everybody is doing this at the same time. You know what I mean? Even with the glitches, we were fine with it because that was a part of the narrative, right? That you felt like you was a part of a moment.
Yeah.
That even when shit was fucked up or RZA dressed all crazy, whatever, like everybody was a part of it, and that was something to kind of take our minds off of it because, like, dog, like we were terrified about COVID. I had no fucking clue what was going on. Like terrified. Like that first COVID Christmas. When I visited my parents, they had to put my gifts in a box in the garage and kind of like, you know, on Color Purple when Shorty like had the food tray and slid it out the door.
Yeah.
Like they put my gifts in the garage and pushed that shit out. And I opened my gifts in my car, FaceTiming my family. Like shit, we had no fucking clue what was going on.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think the RZA and Primo joint was a big deal for that. If I want to pick a third one, gosh, I tell you one. Because I really appreciated what she did. I think the Jill versus Erica one was great. Only because Erica did what I thought should have been done. Like Erica, sort of like we talked about the Locks taking it seriously. Erica was like, yo, nigga, I got a website, I got merchandise, I got this, I got that. Erica was on her shit with that. You know what I mean? She like, in between the battle, you got the pussy incense and you got a performance coming and you got like, so I thought that was a great moment to show what the verses could have been. You know what I'm saying? As far as a business model. So yeah. So I would say Jadakiss murdering everybody's number one. Number two was RZA and Primo, and I think number three, Erica and Jill.
Dope. Question number 3. Have you ever witnessed somebody pull the "Do you know who I am" card and it backfired?
I have 2 answers to this. Number one, I used to work in Columbia Mall. It was about 20 years ago. And there was a rapper named Loon from Bad Boy Records.
Oh,
yo. And there was a moment where he's trying to get like a cinnamon bun or something from this like place or whatever. And he's trying to flirt with this chick and she just had no fucking clue who he was. And there was a moment where he didn't say, "Do you know who I am?" But he was like trying to flirt with her and she just wasn't paying attention. And he looked at me kind of like, yo, this bitch crazy. She don't know who I, and he's thinking that I'm like a supporter that's gonna understand his plight. Like we're gonna make her feel silly. But I'm like, dog, like when you gotta say that, it just don't work. Like the funniest story that I heard about that, the best way to handle that shit is I heard this story where it was like the Grammys when Beck won Album of the Year. And so after that, Beck was hanging with Paul McCartney and they were trying to get into a Grammy party. And there was a Grammy party by Tigger. There's a Tigger Grammy party. And so they go to the door, not Tigger from Rap City. I'm talking about Tyga, whatever. T-Y-G.
Okay. All
right. So yeah. So Tyga. So they tried to get into the after party, and security wouldn't let in Beck and Paul McCartney.
Wow.
Because they didn't know who the fuck they were. And the greatest thing that happened, Paul McCartney didn't say, I'm a Beatle. He didn't say I'm worth $3 billion. When they went and let him in, all Paul McCartney said was, well, I guess I got to make more hits. Right? So like, right? So I always thought that was like the greatest response. So like if he would have been like, you know who I am, I feel like you lost. Like I don't give a fuck who you are.
Yeah.
If you say that, if you got to say it, you lost. The second thing that happened, it wasn't like a you know who I am situation, but I don't think he's gonna see this, so I'll just say it. So brought Talib Kweli to Columbia.
I can't wait to hear it. Let's go.
Oh, this ain't a bad one. This ain't a bad one.
Okay.
It ain't too crazy. But it was like he gets in town and he wants to go to the mall and get a hat. And so like my homeboy security, we drive over to Harbison Mall and go to Lids so he can get a hat. and there was just a moment where he gets his hat and Lids is basically like, hey, you know, are you a Lids member? Yada yada yada. And he's like, yes. And they was like, what's your name? He's like, Talib Kweli. And it was like, what is it? Talib Kweli. What is it again? Talib Kweli. And so like him having to spell his name and do the email, yo, it was a moment where I don't think he felt any offense. I think he just thought that we were just some stupid country bumpkins. You know what I'm saying? Like, right? Like I just think, yo, he was just so fed up. When that girl asked him his name like 3 or 4 times, I was like, oh my God. And then when she's like, can you spell it? It was just like, he was just through. So that was so that feels like, do you know who I am moment. But he ain't do no, yo, you never heard of Black Star, bitch? I'm friends with Dave Chappelle. He ain't do none of that. He ain't do none of that. You know what I mean? But the third time she asked him for his name and he kept repeating it, his face just kept getting more and more annoyed. And I was like, fuck. You know, and this is like the first celebrity I brought into town. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want him to feel bad.
Yeah.
That, you know what I mean? That my city don't know. But yeah. So yeah, that's the second answer to the question.
Man, I had a question number 4 lined up, but based off of my my discontinued restaurant related post I made on Facebook that you commented on, I figured we'd make a pivot and talk about this discontinued restaurant. So what are your fondest, question number 4, what are your fondest memories of Po Folks?
All right. I don't know if it's a fond memory, but the thing I remember the most, like, so Po Folks is like, I think like I don't know if people understand this outside the South, but Po Folks is one of those like Lizard Thicket. And in the South, we do the meat and 3 thing, right? So it's like the Southern cooking shit. So like Po Folks is the spot that we used to go to, my family used to go to all the time. The thing I remember the most about Po Folks, so I got a brother, I got a sister, and my family went to Po Folks. And you know, I was a chubby kid, so I'm ready to eat, whatever. And somehow, some way, my sister gets sick while we at the dinner table.
Oh no.
Man, just throwing up all over the table.
Oh no.
Just wilding. And God bless her, we had a black waitress. She was just mad cool. She was coming up, getting us towels and shit like that. And it was just, and the look on my mom's face, like, fuck. Like, you know what I mean? Like just having to like, oh, I'm so, look at her, I'm so sorry. I hope my parents tipped that woman beyond. I hope, man, look, I hope they should still be sending her Christmas cards to this day. That shit was like probably 25 years ago. But gosh, was that the last time we went to Po Folks? I don't know if they were so ashamed. I can't remember. But I don't know when Po Folks closed, but that was our fucking spot. That was our spot. Po Folks, another place. Did you ever go to Edna's? Was there Edna's? It was like a hot dog spot.
No, we never had an Edna's.
Okay, I don't know if that was something that was just in Columbia or not, but those are 2 spots. We used to go to Po Folks and Edna's. And Edna's is kind of like a Zesto's type of thing where you get like hot dogs and shit like that. But yeah, Po Folks was our place. But the lasting memory was my sister getting sick. Matter of fact, when we get off of here, I'm gonna call my mom and ask her about that. It might be triggering. She might start crying. I don't know. But just imagine a parent with 3 kids, and I know she was starving. And when that happened, not only you're not going to eat, right? You got to clean all this up. Yo, it was it was a fucking mess. It was a fucking mess. That's all I remember. And that's all I remember from my po folks experience. But yeah.
And you also bringing up Zesto. I'm adding a little addendum to question number 4. So, Zesto or Lizard's Thicket? Who would you choose?
Funny enough, in Columbia, the Lizard's Thicket is right by Zesto. All right.
Really?
Yo, on Forest Drive, it's like 2 minutes from my house, dog. That's where matter of fact, you might have my ass going out there when I get out of here. But I'll be honest with you. Lizard's Thicket, maybe overall, but during the pandemic, it was Zesto's because they were, I don't know if Lizard's Thicket was closed, but Zesto was the only place that was like kind of still open. You know what I mean?
I got you.
And that was like, and it was the most normal shit during the pandemic that I just started going on all the time. You know what I'm saying? And it was funny, funny story. I wrote a column about how the column was like how Zesto saved my life during the pandemic.
I remember reading that one.
And it was a funny part in there where I was talking about how you get your chicken snack or your chicken dinner, and I said, and it comes with coleslaw, and I put in parentheses the best way to eat coleslaw is to throw it in the trash can. And so I go to Zesto one day, and this woman working behind the counter, she come up to me, preach Jacob. I'm like, yes, yo, she was just like, I read your article, and I'm thinking she about to be all nice about it. She said, I make the coleslaw.
Ooh.
Yo, she was so mad. She was like, the best way to eat it is to throw it in the trash. Yo, she was livid. But that's my homegirl now. Like, so that's a joke that we got all the time now. So every time I go see her, she'd be like, we got some coleslaw for you. I was like, like, yeah. But like, it saved me during the pandemic. So like, yeah, I would say Zesto.
And reading your article that's the first time I heard of Zesto. And then I remember I stopped at Papa Jazz to chop it up with you. And I was like, you said, where you going next?
Go over there.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Zesto. And man, it was like a trip in the yesteryear. And I saw like the cobblestone style floor. I'm like, this is exactly where I need to be.
Yo, and something about their chicken too. It's like they don't call it fried; they call it broasted. It's like baked and roasted. It's like a technique they do. It's like, man, you're gonna have me going there tomorrow. But yeah, I'm not gonna do it tonight. But yeah, Zesto's my spot, man. And they've been there for like 50 years, man. So yeah,
I got this snack box and I got the little red slushy to go with it. I was in there.
Yo, I'm telling you, man, that's like they were one of the few people like during the pandemic, because like they're usually a thing when you walk up and get your food anyway. They were one of the people that kept things rocking and figured out a way to make it safe. And so like, you know, when you're dealing with the crazy thing about the pandemic, and I think I want to write something at some point because I think we're about a couple of years removed from it. So it's enough time to kind of really reflect on it. But it was like one of the biggest mistakes that happened during the pandemic, you know, listening to like, I call them toxic positive people, where they're like a little too positive, where it's like when the pandemic started, everybody's like, you know what I'm saying? You know, you want to learn a second language. This is time to learn a second language. You know what I'm saying? Put your work in, go your hustle. And I started buying into that shit. Like I was like, oh man, let me do this and yada, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Let me learn this language. Let me write the great American novel. And then emotionally, one day I just fucking hit a wall. And my therapist was like, this isn't a vacation. Everybody's going through global trauma. And if you just survive the day, that's good enough. And I think that when you think of trauma in that sense, you're going to have to your brain tries to find things that feel normal. And I think that Zesto's at the time, because up the street from me, that was like a normal for me. And so like Lizard Thicket has a place in my heart, but like Zesto's get me through it, you know, during the pandemic. I think that puts them number one.
Bigger emotional attachment to it.
Absolutely.
I can dig it. All right, last question. What's the last thing that made you laugh uncontrollably?
Shit. It was probably yesterday, at this listening party. All right, I'm gonna out my brother a little bit. So
let's
I'm gonna
go.
out my brother a little bit.
Ambush exclusive.
So check it. So my homie owns a framing shop called Elite Framing, and he frames a bunch of my shit that's in my house, and he's a really, really dope guy. And when I told him that my album was coming out, he was like, yo, let me frame your record for you. And so he did it as a gift for me. And so I go to the frame shop and I pick it up last week and it looks amazing, whatever. And so I tell my brother, I said, hey, I need you to do me a favor. He's like, what's that? I said, my man gave me a framed picture of the album. When we have the listening party, I need you to pretend like you got it for me. Right? So like he's like, what? I was like, dog, because it'll be corny if I come out here with a framed thing saying that I did it. Yeah. I said, but we're gonna have it wrapped up. I need you to act like you giving me a gift. Cause I'm like, the visual of it looks amazing. You know what I'm saying? Like, so he gave me all this shit about trying to do it. So sure enough, we get it. And I was like, yo, I think my brother got something for me. And we unwrapped it. Everyone's like, oh my God, you know. And so like he gave me so much pushback prior to that. You know what happened the rest of the day yesterday? Everybody's coming up to me and coming up to him. Oh my gosh, your brother got you such a nice gift. That was so sweet of him. And blah, blah, blah. You know, so he kept getting all this credit for getting this for me, right? And I said to him, somebody came up to us and was telling me how beautiful it was, and he's such a great brother, and blah, blah, blah. And it puts me in a position I can't talk shit to him now in front of people because I seem ungrateful. You know what I mean? And I said to him, I was just like, hey man, you was giving me some shit about this, but it worked like a charm. He said, yeah, it did, right? So like
he had me fooled. He was like, I dug into my 401k to get this.
Yo, lied his ass off.
Commitment. He committed to it.
So I'm giving him all this credit to do this fly shit for me, but it was fucking hilarious, man. So yeah, especially he gave me pushback on it. And I was like, dog, like trust me on this. And so like now I'm kind of a little jealous about it because it's just like, you know, like the chicks at the party say, oh my God, your brother did such a nice thing. And so it was like, God damn it, man. but if I said that I did it myself or my homie got it for me, it wouldn't sound the same way. So I had to give him some of that shit to uplift him. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's hilarious. Y'all had me fooled.
No, I'm telling you.
Lord knows y'all had me fooled.
There was a picture. My homegirl took a picture of me laughing uncontrollably. And I guess it was right at that time when I whispered to him, that shit worked like a charm. Because I'm laughing at it because nobody knows the joke. But that was the joke. That was the joke. He ain't get that shit.
That's hilarious.
I'm outing him right now. So, yeah.
Oh man. So just to wrap this thing up, is there anything you want to promote or plug? The floor is officially yours.
The album, man. We got like 300 pieces of vinyl, the Francis record.
Francis.
You can go to mobettersoul.com. It's on there. Every record.
I got this shirt.
Yo,
featuring Priest Jacobs from mobettersoul.bigcartel.com.
So that's my dad's actual mustache. And so he's had the mustache for years. Yeah. So here's the story behind it. So that picture was like based on the artwork from an old CD I did. And Dre used to make fun of my dad's mustache. Like, yo, your dad needs to leave that mustache in the will for you. Yada, yada, yada. So he literally took my father's mustache and photoshopped it on me and gave me a Coogee sweater.
That is hilarious.
Yeah. So yeah. So I actually got my dad that shirt for his birthday one year because people be like, because he all like, so the inside joke, every time somebody talks about me to my brother always say I'm adopted, and then my dad say I'm adopted, which is the funniest shit because I look just like my dad.
Yeah.
And so I gave him that shirt with his mustache on it. I was like, you can't say I'm adopted now, nigga. I look just like you, right? You see a picture of my dad, he looks just like that. It's the funniest shit in the world. But that's my father's mustache. So yeah.
I'm just picturing your pops with the twists in his hair.
Right?
So good.
So yeah, go to the site, get the record. It's going to be on all digital platforms February 24th. And buy the tickets to the listening party. It's going to be March the 5th at Nickelodeon. Go to nickelodeon.org, O-R-G, get tickets for that. And I'm giving you 2 tickets to give away to any of your listeners. Just tell me, the names to put down on it. And I'm just excited about having some new music. And now it's time to tour and push it. And that's the part of it that I think is really, really dope, is to be able to meet new people in different cities and have an excuse to travel. So yeah,
Word.
I just want anybody to check it out. I really appreciate it.
And tell the people where they can find you online.
Preach Jacobs is the best way. So if you go to Instagram, it's Preach Jacobs. If you go to Facebook, which I'm so sick of saying Facebook, but Preach Jacobs on Facebook. I think they're making me use my real name is Derek, Derick, but y'all don't even know all that shit. But Preach Jacobs on all social platforms. Just look me up. Yeah, it's the best way to find me.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you so much for being on here. This is, God almighty, this has been such a gas. Such a gas. And make sure that y'all like and subscribe and download to the At the Plate podcast. Like, subscribe, and download to the Negro League podcast with Preach Jacobs as well. Because listen, I approve his podcast like 2 fists up.
Oh, we got to get you on there. So like when I'm ready, and the young lady that we was talking about that we're not going to mention on here that I was getting those shirts for, we're getting her on the pod. So yeah, we're working on that too. So
okay, dope.
That's
dope,
something
dope,
I'm working
dope.
on right now. But yeah,
dope.
But yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on, brother.
Yes, sir. And this has been another episode of At the Plate podcast. And until next time, we out. 3 strikes.
You got it? Everything recorded all right?
Yep.
All right. I appreciate it, man. If you need something else, let me know.